I copied a reel from Houston Kold and learned quite a few things. Now, it's much easier and time efficient to implement this style as something you create. Let's go ahead and break down the workflow. The broad workflow of this style is to start in Premiere Pro, then Photoshop, then After Effects, and finish in Premiere Pro. This style uses scenes to mimic a unique environment and an After Effects camera to move within that environment in a three-dimensional space. The scenes consist of a variation of 5 components. You have the background, an element of depth, a subject or talent, a text layer, and a texture or overlay. That's it. The detailed breakdown of the workflow that I've come up with is this. Starting in Premiere Pro, we're cutting up our clip, we're doing the color grading, we fix the audio. The lazy settings that I use is using a hard limiter with a -3 dB preset stacked on top of the multi-band compressor broadcast preset. And then I'm going to take notes of key phrases, and I'm determining what text layers will be shown and what elements will be created, as well as the number of scenes to be created. Next, we're going to place markers where the subject is and where the scenes are going to start and stop. But be sure to put those markers on the timeline, not the clip itself. Next, we're going to transcribe and create those captions. I would do 15 characters or less, or 1.5 seconds or less on single lines. Next, you would find the mistakes of the captions, and more importantly, the timing of the captions. Once I have everything perfect, I would export an SRT file. Then I would export the cut up video without the captions burned into the video. Moving on to Photoshop. I would tackle each scene one by one. Keep in mind the 5 components to build each scene. But here's an important tip. You can cheat by leaving out the background, the text layers, and the textures or overlays, cutting the checklist to 2. It's very common for Houston to throw an animated background or an overlay on the scene, or just leave the scene completely black while inside of After Effects. So most of the time, I'm just cutting out elements using the Object Selection tool, Quick Selection tool, and the Magic Wand. After you finish a scene, make a group folder. This is at the bottom of your Layers tab, and store the layers inside of them. Once you have all of your scenes, save them as a Photoshop file, .psd. Now, all of the heavy lifting is going to be done inside of After Effects. Go ahead and import your clip, and you should see your markers. Cut the clip where your markers are and change the color of the layer to indicate this part will show the talent and this part will show the scene. And the way to cut your clip is with Control-Shift-D, or if you're on Mac, Command-Shift-D. Now take note of the duration or length of your clip. Make a new composition and change the duration to match your clip. This will make each scene you open up the same length of your clip. Import your Photoshop file and import it as a composition with editable layer styles and press OK. Inside of each scene composition, you can now make markers on your timeline and snap the work area to the duration of when the scene is going to be shown. This makes it so much easier when you're ready to add your scene compositions to your main composition. Inside of each scene, you're going to be utilizing the 3D camera. This requires the rest of your layers to be in 3D as well. The way you can enable your layers is by selecting the 3D box switch. You can select all of your layers and push one box to have them all enabled. Now, while you already have them all selected, go ahead and turn on motion blur as well. Motion blur are these 3 little circles. The reason for this is our camera doesn't have switches, but the movements we make with the camera interact with the 3D layers. It's important to have both the 3D switch and motion blur switch enabled for them to be seen in a 3-dimensional space, as well as looking as natural as possible when we're moving our camera. These are 2 cameras to choose from, 1 node and 2 node. The main difference between the 2 is the 2 node has an extra set of parameters, point of interest. This is an anchor point planted in the dead center of the camera. Most tutorials are going to tell you to use this for more flexibility, including this video. One of the techniques that you might have seen is creating a null object and parenting our camera to that null object. This allows even more flexibility as you can play with both parameters to get unique movement and more control over the camera. I like using the null for the main movements to make like its own main path, and then using the camera for the detail, where if I have to shift the camera, I can make this while it's on the main path. So the camera's controlling the intricate side, while the null is handling the main movements. One of the easiest moves to start out with is animating a dolly forward and a dolly back with the Z axis. They're physically moving the camera. This isn't a zoom. The zoom is actually in the camera options. You can see the view of the camera change, but we won't mess with that today. Many smooth movements that you'll see are utilizing different speeds. When I was recreating Houston's video, I ended up creating the basic paths of the movements first, and then tweaking the speed second to dial in the position of the camera. Most of the movements were very quick ease outs with a slow ease in, which has a sharp valley at the beginning or on the first keyframe. I would highlight the keyframes and press F9 for easy ease, and then head into the graph editor and crank the influence on the second keyframe to 100%. Now your scenes, they should all be made into 3D layers. On the composition window, I would have the two views active. You can get by with the active camera view and the top view. I would use the Z parameter to separate the scene layers and start pulling in my text layers, my textures, overlays, and backgrounds. You'll likely have to move around your layers and scale them up to keep them in frame. The top view will give you an idea of where the layers are in the 3D space. And just keep note of what layers are on top of one another in your timeline as well. You want them to be stacked as they appear on camera. Now, if you're adding multiple scenes with one camera movement like this section of Houston's video, you want to separate your layers in the scenes and parent them to their own respective null object. This made it much easier to navigate and move entire scenes around rather than highlighting all the layers of one scene and moving them all at once. You can have the null object do that for you and make minor tweaks to the individual layers if need be. And that's really it. You're the one orchestrating the movements and creating the environments. Practice with animating one scene, get the hang of moving the camera around, and maybe add in another scene to make it more dynamic. But again, it takes a lot of practice. Now, Houston's team uses a lot of paid plugins like Maxon's Red Giant and AE Script's Deep Glow. The free options I would recommend are as follows. For glows, I would use Adobe's regular glow effect. You can use these on text layers individually or pre-compose sections and slap a glow on top of it. For text animations in Mr. Horse's starter pack, the text transitions are great presets to use. Also within Mr. Horse's starter pack, their transitions are pretty decent as well. Some different ones are inside of After Effects, which you might be familiar with the ones in Premiere Pro. A common effect Houston uses on his 3D sections is applying posterized time and chopping the frame rate to about 16 or 17. Shout out to Yo AR7. For some easy transitions, Houston uses a lot of film burns, so I cut up some free film burns for our students and paid community. If you want these, you can cut them out yourself. I put the video in the description. I've got a few more things I want to walk you through. If you've gotten this far, please leave a like on the video. We appreciate your support. For some of the talent on-screen sections, you can use the tracker panel to track the talent's nose. Double-click on the layer you want to track, select Track Motion, track type is Transform to start, and we're going to track the position only. Make your selection. The outer box is the area, in our case, the nose will move inside of or around. And the inner box is what we want to focus on, being the nose. Press the play button to analyze. Once the clip is tracked, change the track type to stabilize, then click apply and press OK to add the X and Y keyframes. I would then use the transform settings to scale in and out to keep the clip in frame. This next bit, a lot of people have opinions about, but it's all about your preference and what you're comfortable with as far as a workflow. But these in particular, I want to give you options. I personally like to have as much control as possible, so I make these text animations in After Effects. Now, if you don't care about this in After Effects or Premiere Pro and want to use templates, we are friends with the folks at Submagic. You can use our promo code or affiliate link down below. Now, if you're comfortable with making captions in Premiere Pro and converting them into text layers, you can export this out of After Effects and tackle the text animations in Premiere. Shout out to our preset pack, but we're also friends with the crew at Brevity. Now, their plugin is actually inside of Premiere Pro, so if you want to use their templates, I think it's a pretty good option. If you want to learn more about text animations overall, I posted a free masterclass on our channel where you can decipher nearly any text animation you've ever seen in media. But all that being said, I'm going to show you what's inside of After Effects and show you some dark magic. Not really, but it's still pretty cool. So there's a script out there that allows you to import SRT files into After Effects. Remember when we exported that out of Premiere Pro? I included this script in our course for students, but if you want it for free, you'll have to find it like I did. Create a text layer within After Effects and change the settings to your specifications. Now, the reason that we're doing this is because we need to import the text layers, but When we import it, it's going to grab the most recent settings that we used. You can get rid of this text layer or hide it if you need to. I have the script on my computer, so I go to File, Scripts, Run Script File, select the script, and I'll be prompted to find the SRT file. Select the SRT and watch your text layers get imported to the timeline. Now you'll see why it was important to have all of our captions timed perfectly before importing them into After Effects. Next, I would create guides. You can do this by going to your composition panel and doing Control or Command R, and then going over where the cursor turns to a left and right arrow, and you can drag in guides. Now I'll move the guides where I want them, then I'll select all my text layers and make sure the paragraph setting is centered, and press Ctrl-Alt-Home to center the anchor point of each text layer. And then I'm going to grab the text layer on screen and move it to my guidelines, with all of them still selected. Then I would double check the placement of each of these text layers. The fade in animation that Houston uses a lot is already a preset in After Effects. The preset is called Fade Up Words. It's under Text and in the Animate In folder. Once you put the effect on one layer, you can press U to reveal the keyframes and move and adjust them. Now, thing is, you will have to do this for every text layer. To apply this preset on more of your text layers, select them all and press Ctrl-Alt-Shift-F or Command-Option-Shift-F. Press U to reveal those keyframes and make those adjustments. I'm comfortable doing this with about 10 text layers on the timeline at a time, and using the shy switch to hide and unhide my layers as I knock them out. From here, I'm checking my timing, my animations, my transitions, and once I'm happy, I'll export my video out of After Effects. At last, Premiere Pro. Back in Premiere Pro, I'll import my video and start crafting my sound design. I've been using SoundQ. Their free plan has been great to use, and what I love about it is I can import the sound that I need right into my Premiere Pro timeline. Really useful stuff. Some of the quick techniques that I use are speeding up and slowing down my audio, and just keeping a close eye and ear to make sure that none of my effects are peaking in the red on my volume meter. Then I export my video. Now, if you found this intimidating, we built an After Effects Fear Not module that walks you through the fundamentals of the software. I think knowing the fundamentals makes complicated workflows and edits like this much easier. We've also covered some other creators in there to beef up your portfolio and skill set. Please check out our products, and you can look at our course update video each month to see what is new. Thank you all for tuning in, and let us know who we should cover next. I'll see you in the next one.